The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome. We will begin in 1 minute. Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Miriam Sani from Blue Agility, and we'd like to thank you for joining us for today's web event, Scaling Agile in Regulated Environments, Addressing the Challenges of Compliance with Applied SAFe 4.0. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Please note that the recording of this presentation will be sent out to you within 24 hours after the event. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will do our best to answer all of them. There will also be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter. Eyal?
Thanks, Miriam. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. This is your webinar. This is for your information. We believe that the time that we will spend over the next hour or so, it's going to be a combination of slides plus a demo plus a discussion with you guys. So please feel free to ask any questions you may see fit. Before we get started, I just want to highlight that a lot of you are already on your journey with the Agile transformation. You are at different stages of your journey. However, everybody on this webinar has some kind of compliances that they have to adhere to, whether it is SOX compliance, HIPAA compliance, and others. So with me, I have Peter Pedross, the CEO of PEDCO. Peter, would you like to introduce yourself, and you can go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Eyal. Thanks for hanging over. Good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Pedross. I'm CEO and founder of PEDCO Managed Process Services. To introduce myself, I have over 30 years experience in software engineering. I have a degree in software engineering and management psychology, and I also studied finance at the University of Zurich. As I started programming over 30 years ago, I have been in almost all possible IT positions, from programmer to project manager, metrics engineer to head of development in an XP company, startup company in '99. So since 15 years, I'm also involved in agile developments as well. I'm a certified SAFe consultant and certified in disciplined agile delivery, and have a diploma in quality management from the European Foundation for Quality Assurance. And in my core job, I'm also president of the board for computer science at the Swiss Association of Quality. What we would like to talk today is about regulated environments and the scaled agile framework and our product Applied SAFe. And I prepared some slides for you, and I would like to talk a little bit about the context of where we are, where we think that SAFe and scaled agility and regulated environments is in, and then what that means for agile development. And then I would like to talk a little bit about the motivation for a process model, and then one slide about Applied SAFe and how that is implemented. And then I would like to go into a demo, what that really means in reality, how that could look like, and some theoretical slides, and always included with a demo, what that really means. And then I would like to start the discussion. I think that after 40 minutes we should be over and we can start the discussions. If you have on the topics questions, just shoot them ahead in the chat box, so I will try to answer them immediately if possible. So this one is for Eyal. Eyal?
Thanks, Peter. So just a brief overview of who we are. A lot of you already know who Blue Agility is. This is what we call the House of Blue. Blue Agility is on the left-hand side, you will see that the kind of services that Blue Agility offers. Blue Agility is a consulting company specializing in enterprise agile transformations. Our experience has proven that successful transformations really require an approach where people, process, and technology converge. And this is what this picture over here, this graphic, is trying to depict. As a result of everything that we've learned, we put together an approach which we called the Blue Transformation Model. It basically is based on begin, learn, utilize, and empower. And it really what brings together everything that you see on the left-hand side, all the services types that you see on the left-hand side, the transformation services, the DevOps, the tool deployments, and the training into one big model. On the bottom, you will see some of the partnerships that Blue Agility has. We are a gold partner with Scaled Agile. We are very good partners with PEDCO, as well as CA in version 1. Peter?
Thanks, AL. Okay, so I said that I will talk a little bit the context of processes as a competitive advantage. And if you look at all those pictures of the new companies which all started like 10, 15 years ago, and Uber, Tesla, LinkedIn, Netflix, and so on, we will see that we have an increasing competitive pressure because there are new players on the market, and they all have high innovation levels and high efficiency as well. And what is always more asked for is that we have a low time to market. This has been the truth since decades, I think, and it has been said before, but right now we have also the case that we have Industry 4.0, specifically in Germany. It's quite a big thing, and we have lean startups and agile, which are new topics, and pushing hard into these new markets, into these new companies and new products. And now that we start building having to cyber physical systems, we increase the complexity and the dependency of such high assurance systems dramatically. And what that means is that regulatory and organizational environment is becoming more and more demanding, because regulators, they are aware of what is going on, and Airbnb, they all of a sudden have to deal with tax issues in each country where they're working and doing business. Uber the same. Facebook is facing regulatory requirements as well in sexual harassments. There in the law, there are a lot of new stuff going on, and in the past, it was a little bit the case, as far as I have seen, that it was kind of buddy thing with the regulatory, but now it's becoming more and more demanding. It's getting more and more hard to pass such a test. And if you want to stay on the market, and you need some processes and environments which ensure that all the relevant regulations are complied with. And if we look at what that means is, if you look at on the left side, the regulatory and compliance, the wording, the words we heard before is like quality, safety, security, efficiency, specifications, verification, validation, inspection, the reviews, traceability, document quality management system, processes, metrics, code coverage. Whereas on the right side, we talk about individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation. This is the Agile Manifesto, which I'm sure that you already heard of it, and we are welcoming changing requirements there. Now, this has all to be reflected with such reference models, for example, like the FDA, the ISO 26262, the Automotive Spice 3.0, 2.5, and other reference models like ISO 13485 and so.
So Peter, with many of us coming from different backgrounds, there's a lot of different people on this call, each one representing a company that has different compliances that they have to adhere to. Can you give us a definition of what the compliance is, just in order to baseline our assumption?
Sure. Yes, compliance is an organization's adherence to relevant laws, specifications, and guidelines. And compliance typically requires a documented, objective evidence of solution verification, validation through tests. It requires inspections, analysis, or demonstrations, and that you also have the evidence that you have done so. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
It does. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Then we have also other clients which ask for the HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or other reference models. And if we talk about SAFe, you all are on the journey to SAFe transformation. We think that it is the right framework to go into regulated environments because it already has the hooks built in which we need for compliance with high assurance systems. There's another white paper by Dean Levingwell where he states exactly where he thinks that these hooks are, and we totally agree with that. And if you look at the picture, we see that we build incrementally a solution. And this is into the picture as well. We have fast learning cycles with these program PI planning in inspect and adapt. We have PI demos which routinely deliver objective progress. We have product and process metrics. We organize around value, and we understand the value stream as well, and we apply continuous verification and validation, and we have the solution intent, which also helps to apply continuous verification and validation and traceability. Here we talk about the documentation, and it also talks about the definition of dones, which we need in order to be sure that we have a documented system. We have model-based system engineering and solution intent as a concept for the requirements. And this inspect and adapts, this leads to continuous improvement. So SAFe is really the right thing to go for. And I talked about process models now a lot and processes. And just to have you on the same page, I would like to talk a little bit about a very brief example of a process. We can take here a small process of a visit in a bank of a new client. He agrees to meet, we reserve a meeting room, we prepare some documentation, we identify the client, hand over the documents, write a conversation protocol, and register the client. What we usually do with that is we do activities not just for the sake of it. We are trying to achieve something, to have a work product out of that. And this is like some wishes of the client. We have a reservation. We have a valid client identification. We have some notes of that conversation, and we have a customer information file at the end on a document or so. If you are a larger bank, we have to say who's picking up the phone and who is talking with the client first. So we just say it's an assistant and a consultant. So we have two roles in that process involved already. And if you're the assistant picking up the phone and you haven't done that several times, you may need some checklists and guidelines to know what you're able and allowed to ask to clients. For example, that you ask him, how much money do you want to bring or not? Is that okay to ask that or not? So you need checklists and guidelines as well, depending on your experience. So what you also have, you don't want to have sticky notes on your screen for that notes of wishes. You have usually also tools supporting that. So we have probably a CRM Lite, Outlook for reservation, and an identity track tool, a CRM for customers. That's German, that means customers. And mainframe application KD83, which was implemented in 1983, for example. And while we have now all those activities, work, products, roles, and so, we would like to have some KPIs, some metrics to understand what is really happening. So we want to know how many visits we have terminated and how many documentation has been prepared and how many clients have been identified, and we would like to know about the relation of those visited and terminated visits and identified clients. And if it's 100%, then it's very good. If it's only 10%, it's very bad. And then we have indications on where to look for problems. And this is what we usually want to have from a process so far. But to make it more complicated, we have some regulated requirements. For example, the Fed asks for every client here in Switzerland, or the FINMA, that if you're a citizen of Iran, we can't take you. It's a problem if somebody is from the USA and he lives in Switzerland. And this is all compliance relevant. So you have some activities which are relevant for the compliant. Another thing is that as a company, you may say, we don't want to have any conversations without a protocol. So every conversation needs to have a protocol. So this is our own policy, our internal regulations which we have in a company. And this leads us to the information that we say some of those activities are mandatory or compliance relevant. They can't be tailored away. Other activities can be tailored away, like reserve a meeting room. If you meet somebody in a coffee, you can do that right away as well. This is fine. So this is the kind of information you're expecting from a process model. And for example, if some regulations change, you want to, like for example, that a double identification is required from the Fed, then you would like to know which activities are relevant for that, which tools are relevant for that, and you need to find that information fast and clearly. So this is what you usually want to have from a process model. That was a really easy example. We didn't talk about political exposed persons, or if the identification is not valid, what should happen, and so on. So typically what we want to see is that we can have different views depending on the experience of the viewer. We have guidelines and checklists available at the right place. We have the tools mentioned at the right place, and that the process is a part of the daily work. And due to the metrics, we see that, and due to the metrics, we can prove that we are compliant at any time. The flexibility is built in because we said some activities are tailorable. You can leave them away, and if you want to change it, you will find your way very quick. This is basically what you're expecting from a process model. And if you're asking what is applied SAFe, this is your fully fledged ALM tool-agnostic implementation of SAFe as a process model, but this is exactly what we do, as we did for the picture, for SAFe. It's a comprehensive process model with roles, activities, templates, guidelines, tailoring, milestones, and phases. We started 3 years ago to start with SAFe 2.5 because we thought at this time that it will be the de facto standard for scaled agility. And since then, it just grew bigger and bigger. And we just see that there's such a strong momentum behind the scaled agile framework that it really will be the de facto standard for the next decades. We bring the framework to life, and what you can do, you can instantiate independently on portfolio, value stream, program, and team level, and have multiple process variations. Some of the programs probably are building internal applications. They don't have to deal with all those regulated requirements. Other publicly facing applications might have to. It's built for integration. What I will demonstrate just in a minute runs on a cloud-based server, but you can run it on your own server as well. And what we most of the time will talk about is the compliance mechanisms for regulated environments. In regulated environments, usually you're asked to define also how you do organizational learning, how you define your processes, how you improve those processes, and those processes are included in addition to the Scaled Agile framework as well. If you look at the Scaled Agile framework on the web, everybody can look it up, those sites, they're all copyright protected, so you don't have to write to use those content, the templates, and so on. And we have it included in Applied SAFe, the whole licensing thing of the SAFe content as well. We have developed it very close with Scaled Agile. There was Michael Stump involved, and Alexia Kima, Richard Knaster, Francis Kelly, almost all of the troops of Scaled Agile. And as you know, it always comes like every 1.5 years, a new major version of the Scaled Agile framework out. We will stay upward compatible with the future development of the Scaled Agile framework. What we agreed in contracts is that within 30 person days, we will always stay in sync with the newest version of SAFe. Therefore, we combine compliance and efficiency to scale agility on an enterprise level. Implementation-wise, we have a world-leading process management tool, which is called Stages from Method Park. And what most companies do, they have their own organizational processes, their best practices, some process assets, and what they do is they take Applied SAFe as a content and improve it, enhance it, adopt it to their own organizational processes. Most clients, they have to comply with some maturity models like CMMI, industry standards like IC 62304 or the HIPAA or SOX. They have their own standards, or most companies are lucky enough that they have ensure compliance with several reference models at the same time. And when you do that, what you usually end up is that you have just a monster process. And if you ask your knowledge worker then to adhere to monster process, they will take that as an offense. And usually they're right with that, because what we suggest and what you should do is you instantiate and tailor it to the specific needs of each program. Like that example I gave, 2 programs are publicly facing. They have to comply with all those regulations. 1 internal doesn't have to. So let them, give them the freedom to work less. And so what you need to have is you need to prove that each of those programs fulfills those compliance complies with the regulated requirements of each program. When they are working against their own instance, their own process variation of that program, for example, they will have their own metrics, they will have their own knowledge assets, improvement ideas, and what you need to have as a company, and stated from regulated environments as well, is that you need to have an improvement cycle. And this is my last slide, and that's what I would like to show you in a minute, what it means to have a defined process. And for that, we meet Tom. Tom is new in the company, and he has several years experience in IT, but he has never been working in an agile team. And now he would like to see what portfolio in his new company looks like. For that, I will change to the cloud server. I just press F11. You see it's a browser. It's a Chrome browser, and we go on the 4th level SAFe introduction. And what Tom sees is that he has the same picture as he used to know from the Scaled Agile framework. And if we click on portfolio, we see now that we are in a much, much smaller process model, because right now we are an instance of a specific portfolio. And what Tom sees is that he has his clickable items as he knew before, and he sees now a process where it has activities. He sees this description from the Scaled Agile framework. He can go into an activity, and he sees what he shall do in this activity. In Analyze Epic, we talk a lot about prioritization. If he wants to understand how he can do prioritization, there are several practices involved, like capitalization, planning poke, weighted shortest job first prioritization, and this is all described. You see in which activities this is needed, this practice, and how you get the learnings in order to know that, to understand that. You see the video of Dean Levingwell here as well. What you also see is, if we go back on the Kanban board, Analyze Epic, where we have been before, that you have work products. You see some input work products are needed for and output work products are needed for. If we click on Epic, we see rendered in the model what it needs before and what are dependents. What we have built into Applied SAFe, and this is a benefit from Applied SAFe, we have a full domain model of the scaled agile framework. So there are a lot of discussions of how does a backlog relates to the epic and what is a business epic and success criteria and so on. And this is very clear, and this helps to cut the time of discussions in your teams, in your company, in order to have a comprehensive, common understanding of how you want to perform scaled agile framework in your company. If you want to see all the work products and on portfolio level, you see it here right away as well. If you are in the process, in the activity, you might want to see it different because you have a different experience. If you just want to have a little kick, how it looks like, you go in execution view. And if you're somebody who's really interested in the details, if you're coming from the quality department, you may want to see it as a SIPOC, a supplier input process, output, and consuming process. And they're all navigatable, so you can click you in very details through the process. I personally like the detail view the most, and this is also what is need defined. Each activity comes with a ROSIC, so you know who is responsible for that, where am I supposed to support, who is accountable, and informed and consulted. We have also all roles defined, and if you go to Program Portfolio Manager, for example, we see the SAFe description as it comes out from the Scaled Agile framework, but enhanced with a complete ROSIC, and we see where I'm responsible, what I'm supporting, what I'm accountable, and this again, this helps very much to deploy such a framework as the Scaled Agile framework into a company. It still needs a lot of transformation work and support work, but this is what we have here as a process model. And this is all I wanted to show for the time being. I don't want to go into too much detail, otherwise we can do it in a separate session. And what I would like to do now is to talk about compliance, because this is the topic of today. Establishing compliance needs to know that we have a process model and they're mapped against one or more reference models. We have the CMMI or Spice, IC, the FDA, or the HIPAA, and some clients are asking for SOX as well. We had that at Credit Suisse, for example, and for us it was, for the development, it was mostly interesting for configuration management and testing and traceability of the documentation and the implementation of such systems. What we will do if we have a process model mapped to those reference models, we instantiate and tailor specifically on these three programs which we just have seen. Of course, we can do it to portfolio, team, and value stream as well, but we just stay in the example of the program. And now if we look at the way usually companies are doing compliance, is they'd say, okay, we have to comply with this reference model, for example, CMMI, and you make it easy for the assessment, you may give it to an external company, and they will build you a process model which more or less reflects the generic practices, the process areas, which replicates the names used in the work products and in the processes, and this is very easy for assessment. But we don't recommend to do that because it doesn't reflect what the company really wants. What we usually want is that a company can comply with several reference models, and what we do is we do as a referential mapping. So that generic practice, which has been described in 62304, is in my company in the reflected in the Epic Kanban. So how I do it is better for us. And maybe we also have already known work products like the software architecture document or configuration management plan, which we would like to use, and this reflects all in those same model. And now we call that mapped. This is harder for an assessment and the quality and assurance and department, but it's optimized for usage in a company. It reflects what people are doing in your company. It's not just a shelfware somewhere. And here we're talking about compliance, process compliance, and in a lot of times it's understood that this is enough. What the regulators are looking for is that you adhere to those processes as well. That means you have to prove that those processes are really followed, and you can do that by counting on the work products, because this is the evidence that you're really doing it. So you have some work products, you have some work metrics like the epic burn-up charts, for example, epic progress reports, which are defined in SAFe, and much more metrics. And you have people in that role. You have Tom, you have Chris, you have Michael, which are really using and working in those specific roles. It is done conceptual-wise, it's done that way, that we have a process model. It consists of process elements, those activities, processes, roles, and so on. And it can have several reference models, and the reference model consists of reference elements, which are either work products or practices. And we have a rating to each reference element from the process element, and with a percentage rating. And for example, if you take away one of those process elements which are assigned to a reference element, it will help you to find violations if you violate such a reference model or not. It looks like that, for example, on the Automotive Spice 2.5, we have here selected design 0404, software architectural design, and this is on the right side. You see the text which is describing, this is really coming out of Automotive Spice 2.5, what that really means if we talk about software architectural design. And what we have done here is we have a reference mapping and say, with these activities, those practices, those work products, we are fulfilling that requirement 0404. And with that mapping, of course, they're all 100% now, we can identify the gaps as well. And this is important. If you have some regulate and change the regulations, you see, they're not mapped, so you have the gaps and you can identify them. And what you want to do as well is you want to manage process variations, that your programs don't work against those monster processes. So again, we're talking about instantiation, and some people looking at the SAFe picture and they just see those 4 or 5 levels. And here we see we have one enterprise with several portfolios. Each portfolio can either exist of several value streams or programs directly, or we have also the mixed version where a portfolio can have some programs and some work streams, which include other programs as well. And each of those programs has several teams running. At the end, for an example, in a Swiss bank, it looks like that you have a Swiss banking institute, you have a trading portfolio, has 2 value streams, they have several programs in that, and you have one street side program which is directly bound to that portfolio, and you have several teams. And it's clear that all of those instances on value stream, program, and team may have or will have different variations. They will be different in the processes and they will work different. And that is what we want to have, and what we want to make sure that this is possible. And this is also the concept for that. This is built on a hierarchical question tree. We have, if you look at the Scaled Agile framework, you will find a lot of texts in the Scaled Agile framework when it tells you, in this condition, you can start a program art. In this condition, you would like to have a release management on portfolio level and so on. And this led us to a hierarchical question tree with about 320 questions right now. And depending on your answer, it will ask you more or less questions. And In mean, you will have to answer 12 questions, and then you're through with the whole tailoring. But it's a tremendous, huge impact on the process for the people. And this is what I would like to show you. Linda, she's a program manager, and she wants to tailor her program to the specific needs of the program. And for that, we go into Applied SAFe again, and we take one demo. This is a 3.5 SAFe 3.5, and now we see we are in a program. What we would like to do is we start the tailoring assistant, and we say, okay, we want to be a little bit specific, otherwise we just answer one question and then we're through. What we can say now is, do you need to train to be coordinated with other trains? In my program, this is not important, so let's leave that out. Do you want to use a Kanban to manage the program epics? Yes, probably a good idea. Then on Applied SAFe, we want to be specific, and then we say, do you want to have the ISPMA extensions? No. Product planning? No. Let's just answer no till we are faster through. Regulated environment? Let's say no for the moment. Risk management in a formal regulated environment? No. Traceability? No, please don't. And knowledge management system? Yes, probably we can do that. Huh? And now we say, okay, this is a software which is class A or class B. Let's say class B software. Next query. And now we see, based on our answers, it takes away some of the process and 50 elements. Those are activities, complete processes, work products and roles, and it tells me that I'm violating some of the reference models which has been hooked on specifically on this program. This is the IEC 62304. It talks about risk management. It talks about Automotive Spice, about the modeling, and ISO 9001. So what we can do, we can go back now and say, okay, let's look at the questions which we had before and say, okay, risk management, formal regulated environment, okay. Let's do a preview and let's see what that means. And now it says 20A. If I look at the details, I see, okay, traceability. Okay, let's go for that, and we go back and go on next query. It's not the first time that I do that, of course. And now I go into preview, and now I look at the details, and I'll say, okay, it doesn't violate those medical reference models anymore, so I can take that away, and I can say, I'm fine with that as the responsible person, and I'll leave that way. And now I'm really having the instance of that, and I can see that it has been taken away. If I look at that, for example, that the strategy has been taken away. Okay, that was just shortly to demonstrate you the power of such a system. Now let's go back to the demo, to the presentation. And the third thing which I wanted to show you is about establishing organizational process focus. And here we came up with a complete system of concept of organizational learning. It starts with that you have some lessons learned, you have some improvement stories in your company, you have some knowledge assets which are really experienced learning, and you're going to handle that in a backlog. And depending on that experienced learning, you may have to alter or create new training material, and this will all be reflected in your process asset library. And process elements like activities and so on, they're hooked to roles. So that means roles have some skills and they have some training attendance, and that all connects together. And there are several hooks in SAFe where we lead you to those moments where you start to learn. Like we have a phase learn, which for all levels the same. We have innovation and planning. We have daily stand-ups, inspect and adopts. We have some metrics which you collect. We have a process to compile, process improvement plan, and you have the learnings compliant as a milestone in the enterprise. We have also defined those processes, for example, the organizational process training, process deployment, organizational learning, where you have the skills management and the governance of that. And this is all the processes which are usually the regulars are really checking for as well. And what we do as well, our customers can send us their practices, their activities, their hands up, and we will integrate it. We will anonymize it into Applied SAFe. For example, the latest thing we integrated is a new way of calculating the cost of delay, as it has been done in a large company here in Europe, and this is integrated into Applied SAFe as well. So you can benchmark with the best in class in scaled agility. And there are some results attached, some real-world experiences. We have, you know that there's from Scaled Agile, we have 30 to 75 faster time to market, 50% less defects. We have up to 50% increase in productivity. And the most important, I think, we have happier, more motivated employees. And this is not from Scaled Agile or from me who says that. These are some companies are doing it. The recently was the latest and published case study was by Swisscom 2 weeks ago, and they cut into half their development cycle time from 9 to 12 months to 6 weeks. There are some other slides. You will receive them. These are just statements from companies. And to come to a conclusion, I would say that I'm sure that with SAFe and Applied SAFe, it can be applied in regulated environments. And for that, we have an Applied SAFe value proposition, and we say that building cyber-physical systems is complex, and it's becoming more complex than ever. And it's a growing demand for best practices and processes to help that. And with SAFe 4.0, we bridge that gap. And with Applied SAFe 4.0, you have the power and the capability to grow such a supportive routine. You can start with essential SAFe, extend it with your own SOPs, with your own extensions, and grow later into portfolio, into enterprise-wide understanding of Applied SAFe and SAFe in your company. With Applied SAFe, you will be able to implement fast and precise. You have a crystal clear implementation, you have less discussions, and you can maximize focus on the value delivery. And you can maximize the profit from the transformation companies, from the consulting companies like Blue Agility, which help you in that transformation process. And of course, you can start right away. So that means you will minimize the cost of delay and save years of definition work. It's built to be customizable and extendable. Each version is extendable, and you have a pre-built tailoring which you can use. With that, you will reduce waste and save money, and you can minimize the adoption and the creation investment to have such a process in place. You're going to establish the compliance. You can use your own or specific reference models, and you have additional process to make sure that you reach those level 5 capabilities, level 5 from CMMI, and you will maximize the innovation and improvement of your understanding of scaled agility in your organization. And this is the learning, innovation, and improve. This is also built in, and you can use the built-in knowledge management system to maximize, to improve your value delivery. Now, if you're ready to take off for SAFe in regulated environments, explore a potential fit for you. Just get in contact with us and with Eyal from Blue Agility or myself. You have here the coordinates. And now I would like to be open for questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Peter and Eyal. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder, just be sure to type your questions within the control panel. And It looks like we have some questions. Question from Cindy. Do you manage changes in the reference models to correspond with changes in the regulations? And if so, how do you push those changes to users of that model?
Yeah, I can show that in a second in a demo. And we go to the reference models. They all have, oh, I hope that one has, and this is the newest one. Now let's go to the process model. It's the same, it's all the same. I'm sorry for that. You see here there's a stop sign, and that means each process model and reference model itself, they're all on the configuration management and control. And if you want to look at the previous versions, you can look at several processes. You see their released and valid version, and users of such a system, they always just see the valid version of a process. That means if you're enhancing such a model, you can work in a working revision as long as you want to. You can put it in ready for review, so your quality department can review it, and then you release it to the specific teams. And what you can do also, you can decide on a team-wise which team program portfolio wants to deploy that specific version. So it's not necessary, we had the problem with Credit Suisse first, that not all projects have to, we call the project at this time, have to be in the same version of the process. If for example, if they worked for 2 years and they know they only have 3 months to go in their program, it doesn't make sense to go on the newest version. So you will stay on the older version, but if you just started, it makes sense to go on the newest version. And that is what you comply here. If you go on that, for example, and we are in let's stay on the example which we had before, and if you want to look at the history of the versions, you can see all those versions which we had in here as well. So all the changes are complemented as well. I hope, Cindy, that this answers your question. And Miriam, are there other questions?
Yes, thank you, Peter. One question, based on the kind of people experience, from your experience with your clients, what are the top 3 advantages that users have found when using Applied SAFe in the context of compliance? So something like, discovering gaps in the compliance or reducing the noise in their work. What are people saying about?
A third thing is that it's much easier to get into SAFe because you don't have to understand and interpret the whole model. You can come into a company and say, I'm in that specific role and I can hold myself to those activities, and then I see what work products are expected from me. And what some people said, it is less throwing documents or work products over the fence just to another people, and this is also much less. And for some people really looking into the detail, it helps them to know that some activities which they are doing is bound to the regulated requirements. That's why they are doing it for. And it helps them to understand that this is really required and needed in that company and not only somebody who has asked for it. So in short, then it will help. People are saying they have less tedious discussions on things which are already known. For example, like how do we want to perform a Kanban? What is a Kanban for me? And so all those things are usually answered and much clearer with Applied SAFe. That's what I hear from clients and people voices. Miriam?
Do we have any more questions from our attendees? It looks like we've covered all of our questions. Eyal and Peter, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
Eyal?
Thanks, Miriam and Peter. The only thing that I wanted to close this webinar with is I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar and listening to it. I want to confirm that everybody that has accepted and is attending this webinar is at some stage of their Agile transformation journey. I can also confirm that everybody on this webinar has some regulatory compliance that they have to adhere to. And if you take these two together, the Agile transformation journey as well as the regulatory compliance that you have to adhere to, it makes our job a lot harder. So how can we make it easier? By having some out-of-the-box solutions, by having consultants that already know the process and the challenges and bringing those two services together. We are here to help you. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask.
Yeah, Eyal, I think that was a perfect ending for me as well. I don't have to add anything here. I already talked a lot. And thank you very much for your attention. And I'm looking forward to getting in contact with you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining our webinar. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.